record. There you can
Right.
start.
So I'd like to open the meeting with Jeff Long and his postcards of Franz Joseph. Now, I'm not sure it was Franz Joseph Glacier or Franz Joseph Land.
It's Franz Josef, Glacier and Township.
Okay, so I thought it must be that because given you're a Kiwi, Franz Joseph Land's up in Russia, and I didn't think you'd be, having a crack at that.
Not yet.
Not yet.
So to open the meeting, we have Jeff Long from New Zealand. He's taking us through not only just the postcards, is from my understanding, but there's other ephemera and other items that form this collection of the Franz Josef Glacier, which is about 4.5 hours from Queenstown down in the south.
Yeah.
So I'm going to hand over to Jeff, and he's going to tell us all about it.
Well, maybe. I'll see if I can do the share screen thing, shall I?
Yep.
No. Um, okay. That didn't work. Let me try again. What can you see?
Nothing.
You.
You.
No. Someone give me an instruction.
Have you got it
Okay,
loaded
have you
onto, say, a
open up your
PowerPoint or something like
PowerPoint
that?
first?
I've got the PDF loaded. I can see it.
Right. Now you got to go share screen, which is bottom left, bottom middle. Now where's your? There you,
What can you
there you
see?
go.
Is that it?
Yep. Yep. The Franz Josef Glacier Township.
Okay,
Front
right.
page.
So how do I get rid of that bar at the top?
With when you're doing PDFs, you can't.
Yep.
Okay.
You can only do that on
PowerPoint.
PowerPoint.
Right. Okay. So your guys' pictures are there, righto. So this is about Franz Josef Glacier and its township. This is a postcard exhibit. Are your pictures pictures of you guys obscuring the wording?
No.
No, I've moved it to
No.
the side.
Okay. So I don't usually do picture postcard exhibits of geographical
Jeff,
areas.
sorry to interrupt you, but if you close your all tools on the left-hand side, which we
Yeah.
don't, no, down a little bit down and to the right, there's a little X
Oh,
there.
yeah.
That'll give us a better view of the whole screen.
Yep.
And now if you do Control L, you'll get a full screen. There you go. Now we can't see all your other
Oh, there you go. You can get
private
rid of
stuff. No worries.
Now, the only problem is that you guys are obstructing my arrow to be able to go up and down.
If you go up to the top right where it says View, can you see side by side gallery? Under the heading, right up at the top right, there's a word saying View.
No.
If you drop that down, one of your options is side by side gallery. That should move us all to one side.
Perhaps I should, said I.
We're going through a couple of different pages at the moment.
Yeah, and I haven't really got to the place where I can see my arrows for moving you up and down. How do I get rid of you guys in the picture?
That's all fine for me. I've changed my view. That's what you've got to do.
Not working terribly well.
Well, we can see it all.
I think
but
I can't see
arrow
my
up
up
to
and
the
down
start.
arrows. I'll use the ones on the keyboard.
Yep, that'll be the easiest thing.
Okay. So the Franz Josef Glacier is quite famous, not just in New Zealand, but overseas as well, because it's one of the few glaciers anywhere in the world in a temperate area. So there's the Fox Glacier and the Franz Glacier. And although they've retreated hugely, and especially in recent years, they have had years when they've advanced and then retreated again. So this is what I call a social postcard exhibit. Don't try this at home because it's not legal. The things that on the front page are all fine. So just any sort of exhibit, I guess, the title is important. If I was sending this anywhere from New Zealand or Australia, I'd also have the word New Zealand in the title so people get an idea about where it is geographically. So I've got a little bit there about the glacier itself, 12 kilometers long, but going backwards. It was named after Julius von Haast, who was a German explorer. He came past here in 1865. You couldn't get to it until 1911 by vehicle, so people used to go using horses. So that's the general introduction and the heading. It's got a little bit about what this exhibit is going to do, what I'm going to show. So it's a social postcard exhibit. There's no class for this at present. It's a bit like open class in philately, but it's using postcards instead of the stamps. So you're still required to have the same sort of balance between the core material, which is the postcards, and other material. So that's the third thing which I think you need to have in the title page, and it's got a plan. That's the top half, and the bottom half has got an interesting picture. Tells you about the how I'm going to describe the technical details. So in philately, you have information about the material which is of a technical nature. So that could be about perforations, papers, all those sorts of things. In postcards, it's the same. This is something which people have a little bit of difficulty with if they switch from stamps to postcards because they think, oh, there's no technical information available. But once you get to grips with it, there is. So what I've said here is that the technical details are in blue. The storyline is just an ordinary font. And rare items are boxed in red, and I've got a bibliography. So there's 6 or 7 things which you should have on the title page of any type of exhibit, I think. And that includes picture postcards. Just shout out if you've got any queries as we go. So discovery of the glacier I mentioned before, it was named after Emperor Franz Josef. That's his spelling, Josef. But you can actually find postcards which have anglicized that to Joseph, but not commonly. So I've got a postcard there of the Emperor, produced in 1908, and I've also got one of his medals commemorating 60 years. Now, in a strict postcard exhibit, that medal is a no-no, but I'm doing a social postcard exhibit, so I can have other things than just picture postcards. This is the first view of the Franz Josef Glacier, and it is a scan. Now, you're not supposed to do scans of full size, just as you're not supposed to do that sort of thing and organized philately. But I've labeled it as a scan. There's a bit of a tendency in some places in Australia to have a scan and make it a postcard size without necessarily labeling it as a scan. Be good if that could be stopped. So this must have been taken after 1911 because the road didn't open until then. And they had these flash cars, usually Studebakers, run by a number of firms, West Coast Motors in this particular case. To give you an idea about the technical information you could have in a picture postcard exhibit, I wouldn't use this postcard in a proper exhibit unless I also had a postcard of the same image. If the photo and the postcard are the same image, then I'd treat the photo as being like a precursor, or if you want to use a fancy word, some sort of proof. So someone has used the photo to produce subsequently a postcard, but I don't have a postcard of this image. So the technical information we can see down there at the bottom there, this tells you who the photograph is by, which isn't hard because it's actually written on the photograph itself. But the technical information can be expanded. So what can you say about Bathgate? Well, he was based in Waiho Gorge. It was part of the Franz Josef Township, not listed as a photographer in various directories, but he travelled widely in the South Island to obtain pictures, especially the Southern Alps, and he was a mountaineer. He left all his climbing equipment to the Otago Alpine Club. So, and also the image is probably produced using dry plate photography. I'm not going into the details of that, but so that's the sort of technical information which you can have describing images, whether they're postcards or photos, which goes beyond what's actually written on a photo or a postcard. So this is another photo. Again, wouldn't use it, but tells you about the types of vehicles which are there and who owned the road passenger services. It was New Zealand Railways, which is maybe a bit unusual, but in New Zealand, railways perform quite a lot of services other than just transporting usual goods and people. They had an extensive network of bus routes, and in addition to that, they issued stamps for the carriage of parcels. Some of you may have seen these things. They are very collectible in New Zealand, and if you take into account all of the different perforations and papers, I was told the other day that I'm a serious collector that there's about 40,000 combinations of these things you could get. And he's got probably the biggest collection around. He's only got 4,000. So he's got a long way to go. I've got off the track a little bit. Anyway, a return trip from Hokitika to Franz Josef was £3. That's quite a bit of money. You can see on the right-hand side, I've got a strip map there. These are produced by the Automobile Association back in the day, and they would say, show you the road, give you descriptions of the road in various places, and also things to see. So neither of these things would you have in a proper postcard exhibit. You could fly in. Originally, travel in South Westland was restricted to landing on beaches. But at Franz Josef early on from the 1930s, they had an airstrip, pretty rough one. There's a photograph there. It's not a postcard. And there's an air travel limited ticket from Bruce Bay back to Hokitika. So again, neither of those would you be using except in this type of exhibit. So if you're traveling down from Hokitika or Greymouth sort of area, the first views you get of the hills down this area and the glacier from Lake Mapariki. You can just see the little bit of the glacier there. See my little hand there? You just see a little bit of the glacier there, and it's reflected in the lake. So these are two small photographs, or snaps, is what I would call them. When you get near the township. Now here's a whole page, and there's only one of these items which is a proper postcard, which is a top up the top. Got a little bit of technical information, so it's a collar type card. So I'm not going to go into explaining that tonight. And I've said it's printed by the German Roder company. Most early New Zealand postcards were printed in Germany, so they'd send over an image and say, oh, I want 50 of these. Now, interestingly enough, they didn't necessarily produce 50 all on a tie. But when you look at a complete sheet of postcards that came from companies like Roder, and there were a number of them which were absolutely gigantic, producing millions of cards a year, a typical sheet would have lots and lots of different images. I haven't yet worked out how they managed to get together in order for, let's say, 50 of this postcard here when it's on a number of different sheets. But they did have the technology to do it. So the only reason you know this is a German Rhoda card with that number is that number appears on the back of the card. So if it's in red down the bottom of the back of the card, you know it's produced by the Rhoda company. This is from a sort of a collectible card sort of thing, and a Weet-Bix card. Do you get Weet-Bix in Australia?
Oh, yes.
Okay, good. And then one of these little badges that you can put on your arm, and a label off a bottle. So it's quite a wide range of things that you can get in an open postcard exhibit to go with the postcards themselves. This is just a partial view because this is a half page from my exhibit, if you like. It's a 48-page exhibit. So this one is the top half of a photograph is taken by Roland James Searle. So I've got some information about him, how he took the pictures using a folding Kodak camera, and that he was an international photography participant. So again, that's more of the technical information. So up the top in black is my storyline, and all this blue stuff, as I said on page 1, is technical information about this particular item. The rest of it's down the bottom of the page, which you can't see. So when you get to the township itself, it's a small township, about 300 people, but it has thousands of visitors every year, not during COVID, but at other times, big numbers, many thousands coming through each year. So I've got a little bit of technical information about that, about pictorial publications and when they were in action, and then the firm was being sold. So this is a postcard. It's a multi-view postcard. Postal services. So we had postal services. So this is stamped with Y-Ho Gorge, which was the name of Franz Josef. Down here is unaccepted design sketch by Ray Collins for the 1935 pictorial issue of New Zealand. So Jack will know about that because it's part of your time period, isn't it, Jack? Yes. And then an envelope with Franz Josef written on it. The post office itself was run by the Graham family, and they owned the hotel as well. And they were there from 1907 to 1960, the family, not this one person all of the time, and the Grahams were guides and photographers as well. So this is Graham's Hotel, it's in the background here. Just a single story building, and it was relocated. They put it on a slide and shifted it up a hill onto this area over here. This particular postcard, this has got MEG1. No one knew who MEG was until I did quite a bit of work on finding it out. And it's for Margaret Graham, who was one of the sisters of the Graham brothers. And the Graham brothers were primarily guides, but also ran the hotel and the post office. You can see as a note over here, it's been raining here ever since we arrived, and we intend to go to the Glaciers as soon as we get a fine day, which doesn't happen terribly often. And this is another view of the Glacier Hotel. It's called Graham's Glacier Hotel. This one's number 27. You know, I know from having a number of these real photo postcards that these numbers mean that they were produced by Alec Graham, ACG. It's number 27. I know that because I've got other numbers around it. These were all published by Frank Duncan, who bought up images from practically every photographer in New Zealand over a period of time until they had thousands and thousands of images. This is a more modern view of the rebuilt hotel. The Waiho River, which we'll get onto a little bit later, is a bit of a problem because it flows from the Franz Josef Glacier out to the sea. It can get a bit wild when you get heavy rain. And the last time it got wild, it went right through this hotel and pretty much destroyed it. They've got a famous church, two famous churches there. One's the St. James Church. It was a fundraising thing. This is where you can have two examples of the same things. This is a snap, a small photograph, same image here on a picture postcard. The more famous church is this one, the St. James Church, because when you look towards the altar, there's a big window behind it. And if you look through the window, you can see here the glacier. Well, you used to be able to see, but now the glacier is retreated around out of sight. This one here is a picture by Mark Lysons. So he was a lay preacher at the church. He was killed in a casino, 1944, but he was also a mountaineer and a guide. Another climber in the area was the Reverend Newton, and he donated most of the material that sits on the altar here. So the reason that you've got these temperate climate glaciers is because of the amount of neve. That's the snow accumulation area. So for the Fox and Franz Josef glaciers, although they're separate glaciers, the combined snow collection area, which is known as the neve, it covers over 130 square kilometers. So there's a huge amount of snow accumulation, and as it compacts down to form ice, it flows down the valley. So if you have a period when there's a much smaller snowfall than usual, it'll take some years to flow through to being a retreating glacier at the snout. But conversely, if you get a large amount of snowfall in a particular season, then it'll take some years for an advance. But there have been a number of advances of the glacier last century in particular, quite significant advances. So once it starts to move down the slope, it tends to split. And this is a picture of ice pinnacles. And the major reason why you got these such large ice pinnacles is because partway down the bed of the glacier, there is a bump where it suddenly this becomes much steeper. And as the ice flows over this much steeper part of the bed, it splits into sections, and these are called pinnacles or seracs, and you can see a guide here. You used to be able to take guided walks on the glacier. Can't any longer because too dangerous, because with the amount of retreat of the glacier, the conditions on the glacier are changing far too quickly, with pieces falling off and meltwater causing holes. So it's not safe to climb on the glacier any longer. This is another view from Margaret Graham again, looking down between a couple of these large crevasses down towards the snout of the glacier down here. And this is the Waiho River you can see flowing along here. So the Waiho River receives all of its water from Franz Josef Glacier. This is an ice arch caused by uneven melting. This is a James Ring photograph. So again, I've got quite a lot of information here about James Ring. It's technical information about the postcard and the photographer who's involved. So he was based in Hokitika from 1879, and he had over 1,000 images of West Coast scenes, and he used to offer them in packages and individually. And in 1890, he'd send you 52 views, post-free to any part of the world for 2 guineas. And they weren't postcards because we didn't have postcards in New Zealand, not commercially produced postcards in 1890. there were images like this. So at the lower end of the glacier, this is the snout area. These days, all of this area down here is gone. The glacier has retreated up to about here. So it's a massive amount of ice which has melted. And most of the lower part of the glacier as it exists now is covered in moraine. So the moraine is the material which the glacier carries along. It can carry it on top of the glacier or at the sides or underneath. And all of that rock is derived from these sections here. Falls off there and on top of the glacier. And eventually you can't see much of the glacier. It just looks like a pile of rock. This is a photo by Ralph Warburton, who was also a guide at Franz Josef Hotel. And he'd take parties onto the ice of up to 100 people at a time. So health and safety wouldn't agree with that these days. And in fact, no one can go on the ice now by walking. We'll see how he can get on the ice shortly. He used to take his dog, Scott, with him. So these are other items related to the terminal face. So it's a little group of pictures in a souvenir packet. And here is well, you won't be able to see the picture, but it's a slide of the snout that someone has taken. So having a look at the Waiho River itself, you can see this is the snout of the glacier here, and we've got a large pool of water here before it starts flowing down. Most New Zealand glaciers now are in serious retreat, and even huge glaciers like the Tasman Glacier has developed now a massive lake in front of the snout with big blocks of ice, and half-wits go kayaking on it. They could actually come unstuck quite quickly. Gives you an idea about the size of the snout here by this person standing here. So there's a message. So I've got storyline here, then technical information here. Notice this is an example where the spelling on the postcard is Joseph with a PH, but you don't get very many of those. And then I've got information which is actually written on the back of the card. I only do this if it specifically relates to the image, as this one does. So it's talking about the river being a dirty grey colour, mainly due to the rock flour. So the glaciers have incredible grinding capacity, and they'll grind rock down so it's so fine it's now called rock flour. There are various tracks to go and view the glacier. This piece of rock here with the glacier in the background is a monadnock. Any geologist listening to this? A monadnock is a rock over which a glacier has completely passed over the top. And one side of it tends to be relatively smooth, and the other side of it tends to be more plucked. So you can see how much retreat there has been going back hundreds of years. This glacier went right over the top of this rock. This is what's called Peter's Pool. So it's a postcard and another postcard, and this is a small version. So they're all showing the same image. The initial image was taken by Alec Graham, and then it became National Publicity Studios. So this is called a kettle lake. It's formed when there's a huge block of ice which is left behind as the glacier retreats, and then it melts, and you're left with a hole which subsequently fills with water. Neither of these are postcards. These are images which I've taken from a guidebook to the Franz Josef Glacier, showing the different types of vegetation which grow as the glacier retreats, and then the more famous one will be the mountain lily. This is a calendar, 1944. Takes the whole page. This is a photo of a group walking on the ice. Normally, they get the people who used to do it get provided with boots and a walking pole. And you can see they go up quite steep areas there. The guide at the front, if necessary, he cuts steps and the people follow him. This is a promotional photograph. We think it was put out by Air New Zealand to promote tourism in this particular area. This postcard is one of my greatest finds ever in the world of postcards, because this is Scott, who is Ralph Warburton's dog that used to go on the ice with him. And there's no label on this postcard, but I recognize the dog. Ralph Warburton has written a book, and in there he's got some pictures of his dog. And when I found this at a postcard fair one day, I thought, bloody hell, I know what that is. That's why I put a red border around it. It's a very important item. What have we got here? Oh, these are some other items which I've included in the exhibit, just to have some postal stuff. So here, this is the back of a booklet of stamps, and these are a couple of images from inside it. This one's showing on an ice cave in the Glacier. And this is the Hokitika clock tower, which is close to where one of the photographers had a studio. These stamps are a bit unusual in the sense that, yes, they're produced by New Zealand Post, but you don't find them on their website. They were just developed for sale in local areas. So this booklet was only produced for sale in the Hokitika and Glacier areas. There's a number of huts, but not all that many. This one's a Defiance hut. Again, this is an Alec Graham photograph. It was there for a long time, but it got so dilapidated that in 1979 you couldn't access it from the Glacier, because the Glacier had retreated so much and there was a vertical cliff to climb up to get to the Defiance hut. So they took it apart and re-sited it at the National Park headquarters as an example of a climbing hut. Well, yeah. Right, so you can get onto the Glacier now by helicopter. And last time I was over there, for the first time, I went on a helicopter ride up to, land on this neve area, which is at the top. You're not standing on the glacier itself, you're standing on the snow accumulation area, and it is huge. And you can see down the glacier all the way, so it is quite spectacular. It was quite warm. We were there in short sleeves and shirts, shirt sleeves and shorts. Right, so what about the future of the Franz Josef Glacier? Well, it's retreated, and you can see up top there since 2008, it's retreated over 400 meters and thinned a staggering 70 meters in 1 year alone. Victoria University has a camera there taking pictures all of the time, and they can monitor what's actually happening on the glacier. This is an Australian card by Kerry & Co. in Sydney. So what's the future? Well, the township sits on the Alpine Fault, right on the Alpine Fault. This dotted line going along here is the Alpine Fault, and you can see it's in the midst of these buildings here. Here's the state highway going up here. So they decided that, well, we better be a bit careful, because if the Alpine Fault sort of gives way and there's a bit of an earthquake, we better have a safety zone. So they've got this is a 200-meter safety zone. I'm not quite sure what they think that will achieve, because I've been through the two big earthquakes in Christchurch, and neither of those would be anything like the size of the Alpine Fault if it decides to let go. So 200 meters here, in my estimation, if the Alpine fault really had a big fault on that line, which we haven't had for a long time, but it's due, most of Christchurch would be destroyed. So I can't see that having a 200-meter zone here in the centre of the town is actually going to achieve a hell of a lot, but that's local authorities for you. The fault goes right under this garage, mobile garage here. So one must question how effective that zone's likely to be when there's major slippage would cause damage through the whole of the South Island. And that's not taking into account the damage that the Waiho River would cause, which has already roared right through the middle of the town twice this century alone. And it keeps building up its bed, of course, so it gets higher and higher. That must be it. So that's the Franz Josef Glacier and Township. As I said, it's a social or open class postcard exhibit. There's nowhere is this allowed for yet, but I thought I'd do one anyway. So the idea is you'd have 50 to 60% picture postcards, and the rest could be other items. So it's a bit like the open class in the stamps area.
Well, Jeff, thanks a lot for that. I'm a big fan of social exhibiting because my Gallipoli is a social exhibit.
Yes.
And I've got others that are social exhibits. And like you, I have other displays and exhibits that the stamp world don't even like advertising envelopes. Now I'm getting onto my high horse, Frank, so you guys get off your bums and go and do something about it.
Well, we watch this space.
Yeah, right.
No, he's got first day covers as his first priority.
That's right.
Yeah,
Well,
but
it
you've got
takes
to
a
be
while.
able to display stuff like this. I mean,
Yeah.
my point here is that
Well,
this
I
is
can
where
tell
we
you
should be
now,
taking it.
Gary, at the next exhibition, not Sydney, you'll be able to display anything you want.
Yeah.
Well, I could go to a few places that they probably wouldn't even allow there, Frank Power, but we won't go there.
We did that in Christchurch in 2016. We had a display area, open class, and we had 3 or 4 entries in that. They weren't judged by judges because we thought we couldn't rely on them, but they were judged by public vote.
Yeah.
And they tended to attract just as many people, if not more, than other types of exhibits.
Yeah, but Jeff, that's what the public are interested in.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
They're interested in stuff like this. And for me, I like this. This for me is the future of philately and the future of what we do as collectors. And I actually think as stamp heads, we need to wrap ourselves around the postcard community because postcards are illustrative.
Yes.
People can relate more to a postcard than they can to a postage stamp.
Yes, and also there's a wide range of people who are interested in postcards. I mean, there's collectors, yeah, sure, but there's also genealogists that are extremely keen on postcards because they can almost certainly find a postcard of the church where their parents were married.
Yep.
Well, as well as postcards of their town where they went on holiday or they stayed with their auntie or they were brought up. And so, yes, that group of people are particularly interested, along with historians.
Yep. Yeah, so that's why I think this is the future of what we do, and we need to promote it. And I think some of the judging and